to this event at the University of Southampton, which is being held jointly with Sheffield Hallam University. So it's quite an interesting thing in terms of the technology. We're going to have some talks which are given here, some talks which are given at Sheffield Hallam, and the idea is that you'll be able to see them wherever you are and hopefully take part in the question and answer session. So my name's William Powery. I'm Professor of Geotechnical Engineering at the University of Southampton. And other people might say I lead rail research at Southampton, which is quite a flattering thing for them to say. But I have been involved in rail research, especially from the civil engineering, from the track and infrastructure and earthworks point of view, for probably the last 15 years or so now, which goes back to a thing called Rail Research UK, which was set up by the research councils to try to make up for the demise of what used to be British Rail Research. Funnily enough, I actually started my career as a British Rail civil engineering trainee. I didn't stay with the railways because it was a difficult time for the railways. Even in those days, things were being geared up for privatisation. So it didn't really make for a great atmosphere. Also, I think it's fair to say that at the time of privatisation, mid-1990s, the view of the government at the time was perhaps that rail was an industry that was in managed decline. But that is now far from the case. So we see rail as vibrant, resurgent, taking more passengers than it ever has before. It's got a major role in the future of freight. And if we're really serious about decarbonising transport, it's going to have to be done with a much increased role for rail. So in my opinion, the pause in HS2, which was announced towards the back end of the previous government, is very much that. It's just a pause. That HS2 and a high-speed rail network is going to have a future role to play. It's not just about speed. In fact, the main point about HS2 was capacity. And fueling this revolution, this rail revolution, is going to require not only engineers, but all sorts of other professions. So we're absolutely delighted to be able to host this event today, which has been organised by a lot of hard work. And I'm very grateful to all of the people who've come along with their stands. So I can see that people have come along and been able to talk to people about possible careers, because it's not just Network Rail and the ones that perhaps the rail operating companies. There's also a whole supply chain of consultants, contractors, manufacturers and people who are involved in keeping the rail industry vibrant and moving forward. So you're going to have an opportunity to find out about all of those careers today. So I'm very grateful to all those who've come with the stands to come to talk and give of their time. And I'm especially grateful to colleagues at the Permanent Way Institution who've really sort of put all of this together. I have got a couple of sort of housekeeping announcements that I need to make. First, we're not expecting a fire drill or a fire alarm test. So if the alarm does go, we need to take it seriously as if it's for real. So we need to move to the exits, which are reasonably well indicated. And then the assembly point is out there on the green. And on another slightly more prosaic note, the loos are over in the sort of back corner there, but there aren't that many. But if you need an alternative facility, if you go up one flight of stairs, there are corresponding facilities just on the level above. So I think without any more sort of delay or ado, I think I've probably said all the housekeeping announcements that I need to. I do hope that as many as possible of you will be able to stay for the whole of the afternoon, but we recognise that people have got lectures and things like that, so they might need to drift in and out. I think the big event is it pizza and drinks at 5 o'clock and an opportunity for networking. So hopefully we will catch up with you then. But without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Brian Counter, who's the Technical Director of the Permanent Way Institute. So Brian, over to you.
Okay. Can you see me in Sheffield? Can they see me okay on this side? Yeah. Not sure they can see me. Is that okay? And you can all see me. Can we get rid of that that thing there, if possible? Okay. Right, I'm Brian Counter, Technical Director, PWI. I know quite a few people in this room here today, and I'm probably pretty sure I know quite a few people in Sheffield Hallam, because I've taught at Sheffield Hallam. I've done a few courses up there. I deal a lot with Sheffield Hallam as well. So great to see you all here as students, and I hope you're going to enjoy what's going on for the rest of the day. Can you put your hands up, please, if you've entered the PWI competition? Not bad, not bad. One or two people haven't put their hands up. Come on, you want to win 100 quid. 100 quid for students is a lot of money. I'm not sure what they're doing in Sheffield, but certainly here in Southampton, we really want you to have that somebody's going to win that, because the purpose of the exercise, as I say, my talk's about a worthwhile career in a complex system. It would have been. Sorry, it stopped working. Sorry about this. That's not working. Oh. Okay, this is just a little bit about me. So you must move the camera again now. Sorry about that. Just a bit about me. I've been in the railways all my career. Basically, I've been involved in the railway work itself, but I've also done a PhD as well. So I've been in academia. I didn't expect that to go. So the most important thing is the railway is a great career, and I've worked for different organisations such as Balfour Beatty. I worked for the ORR for a while, but overall, it's a great career to be. So I do represent the railways on various committees and panels, etc. And I'm delighted that I'm here today with my experience to talk to you about why you should be involved in railways. So it's starting to work again now. So the most important thing is well done for doing a degree. And how would you like to start an amazing career within railways and become qualified? A lot of people I deal with in terms of the students and graduates and everything want to be part of this process. So what is it all about? Look at this here. It's an exciting place to be. William mentioned that. I stayed on in British Rail and I saw it go through privatisation, and it was exciting. I worked on the West Coast Main Line with high-speed tilting trains. I've worked all over with bridges, and you can see it's such a complex area. So whatever your discipline, and I'll talk about that later on, your discipline is needed within the railways. Because look at this. What is it? What is it? It's an amazing sector within the UK economy. Look, we have so many suppliers. We have so many people involved in this. And if you're looking at the spend, we're talking about £12 billion spent every year. So it's a lot of money invested in railways, and we need to improve it. And I think one or two of us have had a little bit strange journeys this week. We know we need to improve the railways. We need to have greater capacity. We need to move more freight on the railways. And I'll talk to you about a little bit that later. So what is the PWI? Well, number one, okay, permanent way institution. We were formed a long time ago, but we are railway engineers. We're railway engineers who want to do railway solutions, provide railway solutions. We want to make sure the railways run well. We were formed in 1884, but we're only here for three reasons. The PWI is here for three reasons. First reason is to transfer knowledge. So how do we actually understand the railways? How do we transfer that knowledge? What can we do to enhance the knowledge with research, etc.? How do we meet each other? You're meeting people today. We've got the website. We've got all sorts of ways of communicating. We've got an amazing hub. I've just been talking to one or two people about our hub. You can Google stuff for your research projects. It's all there. The second reason why the PWI is here is for technical education and training. So we're providing a huge number of people in the railway, graduates and other people with training courses in railway engineering. I've got probably about 800 students this year working directly, on the courses that I run within the PWI. So it's a massive investment in people's future. And the last one, of course, and probably the most important thing, is why we are here, because we want to professionalise the railway. We want more professional engineers. We've got nearly 500 at the moment within the PWI. registered with Engineering Council. It's one of my passionate areas that everybody should become a qualified engineer. And there's quite a few people in this room who I've talked to today haven't quite got there yet. Well, they'll know I only talk about that because being chartered is an amazing thing to do. I was chartered when I was 27, very proud of it, with British Rail, and it's made wonders for my career. Amazing place to be. So, like I was saying, a lot of the people, a lot of the things we do, there's a space for everybody within the railway. It's a massive community because we're not only different engineers, but we're also, we need people who look at the other odd words I've thrown in here: ergonomics, human behaviours, people movements, apart from the direct engineering stuff we do here. So there's careers all over the place. The PWI is particularly for railway engineers, but we cover everything. A lot of people join the PWI because they think, well, I'm into railways, and the PWI provides me with a lot of information about being on the railway. It's a great place to be. But we are technologists, but fundamentally, we are disciplinary. A lot of people have a title, like my friend over here, infrastructure maintenance engineer, who's had to learn about other things. What, signalling? You know about signalling now, Alex? Oh, yeah, you see. So I did that when I was regional director of Balfour Beatty. I ran signalling, track and electrification on the Midland Main Line. We have to learn each other's businesses. I was delighted to be part of the process of making the PWI more multidisciplinary. We've got the best electrical engineering courses in this country are delivered by the PWI, for example. They are the best, and we've got a lot of people going through them. So there we are. That's what it's all about. But let's just put it into context on what the railway is. The railway is a massive asset base. It's probably one of the biggest landowners in the country. But it's all one area. We hope that we integrate with everybody else. But you can see, just look at those numbers there. Just look at those numbers there. This is a massive asset. The sad number on there, the very sad number, is the bottom number. Only 38% of the UK rail network is electrified. My goodness, probably that's the worst in Europe. Yeah. Which is not good. But we've got a plan. We've got a plan. We're doing more electrification. We're doing the Midland Main Line is being electrified, and that's working on. We've got other plans around the country to expand other areas. We expect within the next 25 years, we will have another 30% electrified, and then we're going to go for battery. We can't have diesels. We've got to get rid of diesels. And that is an absolute master plan for the railway, which I hope is attractive to people who want to be in this business. So we've got massive challenges within the railway, and I've just thrown a few here. A few here. I mean, safety, massive challenge. We are the safest railway in Europe. Amazing. We are the safe, but we're not brilliant. We had a sad incident in Wales a couple of weeks ago on a line. I used to look after that line. I was track maintenance engineer for that line. I know exactly where it was. I know exactly what the problems are. And we had a train collision caused by leaves on the line. Lots going on with investigations on why it happened, but it was very sad. Further up north, you can see the picture here. In Scotland, we had a problem there with drainage and climate change and one thing and another, and we derailed a train. So we're not brilliant, but we're still very, very safe. But we have to spend all our time, and the PWI is absolutely committed to safety on the railway. And it's not just the staff. Our staff records got much better, but it's the system safety as well. So the whole challenges that are going on here, we've got to innovate and we've got to find new ways of doing things. But I'm worried about the heat, because in 2022, you're probably aware, some of you, remember we had the hottest temperature within records of the UK. In Lincolnshire, it was, it got up to over 41 degrees. Unprecedented. I know it was 2022. What will it be in 2025? you know, the chances are still there, and how will that affect the running of the railway? So looking at what we've got here, I've talked about decarbonisation, but we've got a lot to do with equality, diversion and inclusion. We need to be aware of those areas, particularly in terms of recruiting people. We need more females. We still believe that we're not getting enough females in. We need people. We've always been multidisciplinary, multifunctional, and with with lots of people from different areas. But we need to do more within the railway. We need to qualify more people. But the big area I'm looking at the moment in my area is apprentices. We're filling that gap on skill shortages, and I've got a big event for Network Rail apprentices next week. So, main thing now is, why should you join? Put your hand up in this room. I'm not going to do it in Sheffield, but put your hand up if you're a student member of the PWI. I've got one or two over there. That's good. Good. Well done. Well done. You brownie points over there. So everybody who's involved, you should be a student member. It's free. So even if you're not going to go into railways, perhaps that's your main subject, then why not be interested? You get lots of information for coursework and stuff like that. So I want you to be a free member, because you get all sorts of access to all sorts of information. And those people that are interested in heavy civils, I know one or two people are, you want to see some of those structures on HS2. William talked about that. I mean, HS2 is an amazing project. And some of the stuff that's being built in this country is fabulous. And HS2 is a corporate member of the PWI. They pay us to be part of that process. And we really want them. We want you to understand what we need to do. So hopefully you won't be able to leave the room without signing up, because that's the most important thing that you need to do. So let's just have a look. There are other institutions available. And I work with all these institutions. So often a lot of people in the railways think, well, actually, I don't just want to be the PWI. I want to be civil engineers, mechanical engineers, whatever it is. But we encourage people to actually be part of multiple institutions, like I am. I'm at ICE and I'm also PWI. But looking at this here, just so that you understand where we stand on professional registration, just be aware that bachelor level is incorporated engineer, master's level is going to be chartered engineer. So big decision making for bachelor engineering, mechanic and MEng as well. So and this is the three levels that you get to. We've got a few chartered engineers in the room, got some incorporated engineers, engineering technicians, and I'm very pleased that within the PWI we've actually got more engineering technicians than we have chartered engineers, which is really good, because we want as many people to be qualified at the lower levels. Look at this here. We also have lots and lots of information. Please take some of the journals away with you. I want you to take those away, because we really do want to make sure that you understand and it helps you understand how you're going to do your dissertations, your coursework and all the rest of it. And the Lunch and Learn on Tuesday is very, very popular indeed. So I've done my sales pitch. Now I'm going to get technical, because I'm a technical director. So I'm going to challenge one or two people, and I've got somebody on the front row here I'm going to challenge in a minute. So this is for Patrick here, who's Paddy, who is a well-respected engineer in Network Rail, and he knows all about the theory of buckling of rails, apparently. So, I'm sure that that's a lovely equation, isn't it? There for you students, you like equations. There you are. This is how we decided what we should do about rails. Have you seen this before? Long time. I thought I'd mention you anyway, but it's just it's a technical business, but we need to understand that track shouldn't buckle, and we need to be very, very good in the way we find out. We've not done a lot of research on this recently. We need to do more research. The 1960s was the last time we really looked at this. Okay, so the other thing is, my friends at Leeds University, David and company, do these things called what we call Rayleigh waves. you know, what happens with high-speed lines, you know, what happens to the ground underneath. There's a lot of technical research going on there. Very interesting stuff. I did talk to somebody in the audience about acoustics, airflows, all this sort of thing. It's very important for us to understand that when we're running trains at high speed, what is happening to you know, the ground. I mean, this could be picking up ballast, couldn't it there? Yeah. So we've got to be thinking about the acoustics, the airflow, and everything that we do. So that's very technical there as well. And did I mention that PWI membership is free? Did I mention that? So as you walk out, it is free. So I've kept to time, thank you. I wanted to keep to time, but it's a great technical career. Please consider joining the railway. We are quite nice people. You can see all these people around. They're quite happy and friendly to talk to you. But it's one of those industries that we do talk to each other a lot. We get on well together, and it's a more family sort of way of working. So I'd like to think that, you know, some of you will think about a career with us because it's good fun. And you'll hear from other speakers, and I hope that's going to be an enjoyable time for you. So thank you very much. Oh, I've been asked to say, anybody got any questions? I've got time for questions. Any questions? You want to know more about buckling? Right, okay.
I need to, bro.
Any questions at all? I'm sure you've got some hanging around here, and obviously, you know, you can contact me at Sheffield as well. Any questions from Sheffield, or are they still there?
We're here, Brian. Yes, we can hear you.
Nothing. And if you get a chance to go on one of our courses, like some of these people have done at the front, they love these courses, don't you, Phil? Yeah, you had a good time, didn't you? Yeah. Good. Yeah.
All right. We've got a question here. Yes, go on ahead, Stephen.
The railway, generally speaking, you mentioned about some heat.
Okay, so this is a question for you, Brian. What does your working day look like?
But it might be better to add one more parameter on it, and that is
He's
like
got another question.
dynamic analysis. Although in the Euro we don't have any threat regarding the earthquake, but if we like have an approach in terms of dynamic analysis in the railways, that would be much more better and efficient, I think.
Okay. I mean, on that subject particularly, and I mentioned to you about the hub, we've got presentations from the earthquakes in New Zealand. I don't know if you were aware of the railway was quite badly affected in New Zealand, and there's a whole presentation on that on our Knowledge Hub. Because obviously one of the most important things about the PWI, what we're doing is we're railway engineers worldwide. I do a lot of stuff in Hong Kong at the moment. We've had a Hong Kong delegation. So, you know, all over the world, people are looking at us. As I say, so it's climate change is a big issue, earthquake, anything to do with the world. I mean, look at what's happening in Spain the last couple of weeks. I mean, some of the high-speed lines have been affected by that terrible storm in Valencia. So, you know, we are very conscious of that as well. But thank you for raising that. It's a good one. Thank you.
So, Brian,
Okay.
can you hear me, Brian?
We've had a question come through on Slido asking what your average day looks like.
My average day. Well, as technical director, it means trying to sort out some training courses, trying to answer. My average day is always making sure that somebody takes another step on the journey. Everybody's an individual. You're all volunteers. Has anybody been forced to come here today? Okay, yeah. You've not been forced to, you're volunteers. Everybody's an individual. Everybody has got their own aspiration of where they want to be. And it's family, it's to do with location and stuff like that. But making that step on the journey, I'm delighted. I've got a few people this week, next week, celebration event. I'm delighted to see people get the rewards, the chartered engineer certificates, the certificates for doing the degree. So my average day is to make sure that at least I speak to at least one or two people about their own personal journey. Is that it? Yeah, we can draw that to a close. Right, thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next one.
Thank you, Brian.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Brian.
Hang on. Sorry, I've got one more question. Sorry.
Mine is about the registration. I'm no longer a student. I just graduated last year, but I'm interested in becoming a member. So how do I join?
How do you join?
Yeah,
Well,
no longer a student, but I'm interested in
Is that-
becoming a member.
You join by to become a member. You join by going on the website. It's quite clear on the website, the PWI.org, and then you press individual membership, and it tells you. If you're a student, it's free, or an apprentice, it's free. If you are a fully paid up member, it's £108. It's the best value you ever get. But the one good thing about being a member as well, which is you can put the letters after your name, because to be a member of the PWI, you have to sign up to the code of conduct, which I'm sure would not a problem for you. But then you can put the letters after your name, after your signature, and that sort of thing.
All right, so I can do all that online.
But if you've got any, the best thing to do is see Isaiah, who is sat right in the corner. He's waving at the bottom over there. He will help you through it on your phone.
All right,
We can do that before you go.
I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay. Hopefully you can see me now in Southampton University. Hello, everyone. I'm Joan Heary. I'm the Technical Services Director for the PWI. We had a bit of a late start here, but we seem to be connected now. So I'm going to introduce now the second speaker, who is Steve Fletcher, Deputy Director of Railways and Engineering at the ORR. And the reason that we invited Steve to come along today is, if I was in your position thinking about where am I going to get a job, I would want to get a job in an industry where I know people spend money. There's no point in joining an industry that doesn't have any money to spend, because that's going to be a bit of a dead duck as a career. So Steve, one of the things he's going to talk about is the amount of money that Network Rail is given by the government every 5 years. They're called control periods, and how that money is then spent. Other things I think Steve is going to talk about and touch on today are some of the big societal problems that all of you as engineers have to think about in your career. And Brian's mentioned there are some already about climate change. There's also things to do with accessibility, making sure that every person has access to a station and to a train. So without further ado, Steve, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great introduction. I don't really need to do my presentation now, other than to say what a fantastic world the railway industry is. And I really mean that. And hopefully after the end of this, I am going to do my presentation. You'll agree. And I should say, hello, Southampton. A bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, this, isn't it? But anyway, hello, Southampton, and hello, Sheffield. So, got a technical hitch. We need an engineer. There you go. That's right. Yeah. So I've reached the point in my career where I don't necessarily have to be technical, just good at getting people to do stuff. And that was not pre-planned, but it's a good example. Probably not a good example. So if I fire in, so I work for the rail regulator, but it all started for me 38 years ago or so, and sometime before that. And although not on my CV, I had worked as a wholesale meat salesman. I was a chauffeur. As an undergraduate, I did the sandwich course and worked on the Liverpool Leeds Canal, which was just brilliant for me. And I found my passion not in driving cars or in being a butcher. I found it in civil engineering, and I have loved every minute of it. So I started off at Sizewell B Nuclear Power Station, setting out for on the nuclear island, setting out for steel fixers, concrete gangers, joiners, and I led my trade on construction sites, big, heavy civil engineering construction sites. And I had a training agreement which enabled me to get to a position to become chartered. Having leaving Second Severn Crossing, I worked in the water industry, redesigned and helped oversee the construction of an upgrade to a sewage treatment works, Trust me, it's interesting. And then from then back to what was Lang Civil Engineering back in the day. I was a senior engineer delivering the construction with a French company called GTM of the second Severn crossing across the Bristol Channel. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And I've loved every second of it. From there, I then eventually moved to a career in loss adjusting, which you think loss adjusting, this is the PWI, we shouldn't be talking about that. But in insurance and in loss adjusting is a service that's provided to the insurance world to settle claims. And the part of the business I joined was the part that agreed, negotiated, settled big claims, but also project managed the recovery of what had blown up, what had flooded, what had subsided, wherever it had gone wrong. And the railway was inclusive of some of that work that we did. And I did that for 12 years. And you know what? I love that. But it was always engineering. And within that, there was logistics and high volume claims and managing resources and gaining skills that an engineer needs beyond just being a civil engineer. And I'm wrong with just being a civil engineer. I think it's marvelous. But you will find as you go through your careers that your skill requirements increase exponentially. And as you go through your career, hopefully for you people like me, you'll have a good time at gathering those capabilities that you might not have now, but you definitely will have one day. Ultimately, I wanted to go back to my vocation. I'm a chartered insurer as well, but I missed engineering. And I went back to my vocation, which is civil engineering with Network Rail, where I worked for 10 years as an asset manager. I was a territory civil engineer. And the territory civil engineer back then, that title doesn't exist anymore, was responsible for all the civils assets, earthworks, structures, bridges, stations for operational property. Operational property is stations, depots, maintenance, delivery unit, train sheds, that sort of thing. And I was responsible from King's Cross all the way up to Berwick-upon-Tweed on the East Coast Main Line, and also the Midland Main Line that takes you down there. It's currently managed by Eastern Region now, but at that time, East Anglia wasn't part of it as it is now. Oh God, it was amazing. And the people who I worked with were amazing. And I have nothing but respect for all those people in what we term the orange army in our industry, all those people involved in building stuff, delivering capital works, asset management, doing analysis, system engineering, E&P, power distribution. It's phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. It sounds like I'm selling to you, but I'm just giving you my life's experience, and I'm really grateful for it. So at some point, I had an unexpected offer, because you meet people, I saw Craig, there's a guy up there called Craig Armitage, who I've not seen for 12 years, and it was really nice to see him a bit earlier. And you do meet people, and people remember you. And somebody remembered me and asked me if I would like to go to Saudi Arabia. Out the blue, Saudi Arabia. So that was a big decision for me, and I took it. You know, last opportunity for a big adventure, grey hair, getting older, a bit paunchy. Why don't I go out and have an adventure in the Middle East? And that's what I did. And I spent 3 years operating in the desert, helping Saudi Arabian Rail bring a new passenger railway, 1,600 kilometers long, into service from construction into operation, and a freight operation that took bauxite and freight from the north of Saudi Arabia near the Iraqi border and Jordanian border to the Middle Eastern Gulf. It was boy's own stuff, and boy, did I like it. I never planned to go there. I would never have had the opportunity had I not worked for Network Rail for 10 years. It was ace. It was just brilliant. And then I come back and it was, well, what am I going to do now? And the thing I did was not go back to the job I had before. I wanted to keep progressing and going forward and bring something back to the railway in a way that I felt could be more impactful if I'd just gone back to my normal job. And I joined the office of Rail and Road, a regulator. What's that? What on earth is a regulator? So there's a big list there. We have a safety inspectorate, so we're like the health and safety executive. We've got inspectors all around the country fulfilling the duty of inspectors, as you would expect, monitoring health and safety. We also hold Network Rail to account. Who's heard hold somebody to account? What on earth does that mean? Well, for our team, one of our engineers is with me today. Our engineers and economists, so it's not just engineering, you get economists, are a group of specialist engineers that monitor what Network Rail deliver in terms of what they have committed to deliver over a 5-year period, which is a periodic review that we mentioned a little earlier. But also we monitor the adherence to best practice is demonstrated. And Network Rail are the best in the world, there is no doubt about that. But you always need a regulator with a healthy tension to be their conscience, to nudge them to be better. We respect Network Rail. They're part of my own personal history, but nevertheless, we have to regulate them. That's hold them to account. We also look after the interests of the consumer. So trains are delayed. We want to make sure that information is available to all passengers, and we also want to make sure that people get compensation. So we fulfill a role in that respect too. And we advise the government. So we're going through rail reform currently, where the intention is, the long-term intention is to bring track and train together to operate, integrate as one unit. And that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of change. And what does that mean legally? So we are invited with colleagues in Network Rail and other parts of the industry to advise government on how that can be achieved, what it would look like, that sort of thing. And we provide clear information about railway funding. So I'll touch on this a little bit later again, but we are heavily involved in assisting in the settlement of funds available for Network Rail to spend to deliver what we say they need to deliver, which itself has actually been specified by the government. As a side, we also, not just Network Rail, we hold to account High Speed 1. And we've just gone through the first phase of a programme of doing something very similar to what we've done with Network Rail. It's on a smaller scale, but nevertheless, it takes up a huge amount of our time. It's a lot more complex in the sense that this is a privately funded infrastructure with people who have shares in the interest of the operation of this railway and its profitability. So you can imagine that the scrutiny of our scrutiny is extreme, and we work I think we do quite well. Matt's nodding there, yeah, and he agrees with me, and we've just gone through our first settlement. It's in all the press. We also have engineers that oversee health and safety and advise on the Channel Tunnel. And another engineer that works for me is a rail vehicle engineer, is often in Paris doing his stuff. He speaks French really well, and I'm sure he enjoys his job as well. And we keep the markets under review. We review competition within the market. If you don't have healthy competition, prices go up. If you've got sole traders there and they've got no one to compete with, they can charge you what they like. And we did a review of the digital railway in the UK, and we flagged up certain concerns about having too much reliance on one particular company. And as a result of that, Network Rail and others have made some sort of a shift and enabled in complex ways of procurement to broaden the supply chain in that particular area. So we do quite a broad piece of work. There's 300 of us, just over 300 of us. There's 40,000 in Network Rail, 250 odd thousand within the industry, and more besides as you extend into the supply chain. So we're quite proud of what we do, and really is quite interesting. I think I might be going on a bit too much. Suffice to say, why is the railway important? There's been 1.6 million passenger journeys in 2022-23. 1.6 million passenger journeys. So someone who's really clever, more smarter than I, has worked out that possibly equates to 1.5 billion trips around the world. Can you get that in your head? 1.5 million trips. Did I say billion? 1.5 million trips around the world. So what does that mean? What are we saying? This is just the network in the UK. Can you imagine the number of people? I've mentioned 250,000, but can you imagine all the trades, all the engineers, the specialists in system engineering, the specialists in managing people, the specialists in recruitment, specialists in IT. It's so broad, it's enormous, it's a major employer, the railway industry, and it's going to be here for another 100 years. The opportunities in the railway are phenomenal. You know, it is up to you what you get out of that railway, and there are very few areas where you can get such a broad opportunity as you get in the railway. I am biased, by the way. So how is it funded? So this is the money bit. So it's funded by passenger. All the train tickets are sold and help contribute to running the railway. But of course, a phenomenal amount of money is subsidised by the government. The government pay a huge amount of money. If we look at the industry as a whole, just in 1 year, thinking about enhancements, Midland Main Line, Trans-Pennine Upgrade, High Speed 2, High Speed 1. No, correction, not High Speed 1, that's self-funded, that's commercial. I nearly tripped up there. £35 billion in 1 year in 22-23. £35 billion, that is a huge amount of money. And that is to pay, yes, for infrastructure, but a large amount for the salaries of people doing the work that needs to be done to renew the railway, to enhance the railway, to operate the railway, to run the trains, to maintain the trains, keep the computers going, update the software. A massive amount of money. And you as young individuals have got an opportunity to join that world and use your skills, which there will be a need for, regardless of what any of you are doing here. They'll need your skills to do what needs to be done. And that settlement I talked about for 5 years that we were heavily involved with, Matt and I, we settled for just maintenance. I say just maintenance. There's an army of orange out there maintaining our railway, and renewals and refurbishment. And that was £43 billion to maintain and renew. Keep the railway going, not enhance the railway. So that just shows you how much money is spent, which you extrapolate that to how many job opportunities and career opportunities exist in that railway. Stacks. Network Rail. How could I do a presentation and not mention Network Rail? I am a regulator. I hold them to account. At times they might not think I like them, but I can assure you I've got nothing but respect for my colleagues in Network Rail. Someone's smiling over there, but it's true. Okay. I mentioned 250,000 people working in the railway. There's 32,000 kilometres of track. Yes, I can read too. It's enormous what needs to be managed, and I've enjoyed being part of it every minute of every day, most minutes of every day. Okay. So within this, I've mentioned already, there is construction and there is design and there is demand for experts that we've not had demand for before. Software, cybersecurity, that sort of thing. And let's not forget the environment and how important it is for biodiversity, nature-based solutions. This all needs different skills being brought into the railway that we've not had before. And asset management, that's my background. Managing the whole lot to as efficiently as possible, making sure that we get the best out of our infrastructure that we can for the money that is available to do it. And there are trains, and I don't know a great deal about trains. I'm a civil engineer, ask me about concrete and steel. But there's over 15,000 rail vehicles within our network, and they too need to be manufactured, designed, maintained, housed, operated, timetabled. I could go on for hours, and I'm probably overrunning my time as it is. But we have got an aging infrastructure, and that's where we need you engineering people for the future to help us develop innovative ways to manage part of the infrastructure that could be over 100 years old. And we can't afford to replace everything and make it brand spanking new. It's just unaffordable. So we have to find ways to manage it and maintain it and refurbish it, better ways, more resilient to weather events than ever before. And to make that worse, we've got new technologies, which is in itself not worse. It's exciting, isn't it? Those digital railway things, the fancy signalling that's coming our way, the GSMR that's being replaced by something else. Who wants a phone? That is in the dark ages. You know, the industry's moving on so much. So you've got this weird situation where you've got all this aged infrastructure getting really old and causing problems that we need to mitigate against. And then you got at the same time, equally a new number of technologies that are advancing at such a huge rate, it's difficult to keep on top of. And the challenge there is not just being able to keep pace with these technologies, it's to afford these technologies. So costs are going to go up, there's no doubt about it, but we need engineers to design ways to make things cheaper, more effective. So the challenges are becoming more challenging, I believe, over time. I've mentioned environmental sustainability, nature-based solutions. There's been some great examples around here where Network Rail have worked with the Environment Agency to work around the management of water just outside the operational railway corridor, but it actually meant that it prevented the need to build really heavy civil engineering solutions to a problem linked to flooding. So we need this important expertise within the industry to help us reduce the impact of carbonisation, concrete, steel. You know, they're our worst friends for the environment, aren't they? So we've got to look for these nature-based solutions, and we've got to look at enhancing the biodiversity along the line side. There's 20,000 miles of railway, both directions as well, so that's even more, isn't it? And along that, there's lots of trees and hedges and newts and you know what, and we need to protect that, but manage it in a sensible way, not just hack it and napalm it to death. So it's very important that we deal with that. And we mentioned earlier about accessibility. So there is something called the interoperability regulations. That means if there's new infrastructure or rolling stock, there are certain specifications of requirement to make them consistent every time that will bring costs down. It's an economic driver, but there are so many other benefits, safety benefits, and I particularly wanted to mention accessibility at stations. Matt has just authorised the opening of the Grand Central Station in Northern Ireland. It's enormous, the biggest station they've built, the biggest thing for transport in Northern Ireland in 150 years. And the most important thing that Matt was scrutinising it before he gave authority for that to be opened was the adherence to regulations related to people with restricted mobility. Things go wrong, and you may have heard in the news a few years ago, Carmont derailment, where there were 3 fatalities. Look, this is the safest railway in the world, but things happen. They are low frequency, but high catastrophe. So we need great skills in avoiding situations like this. And we work closely with RAIB, the Accident Investigation Bureau, Rail Accident Investigation Bureau. And our own inspectors go out from a health and safety perspective, and our engineers advise both. And from that, recommendations are made, and we have lessons learned so it doesn't happen again. But on a positive note, we have the safest railway in the world. We are the best of the best. Our standards are copied all over, and I mean all over. People look to the UK for development, for standards, how things should be done. It's brilliant. I love it. That's the railway from my perspective. Some questions.
Question quite interesting.
Right.
What is the railway industry doing for sustainability? Or what actions are they taking to get closer to net zero?
Okay, so the railway plays a major part in decarbonisation. We want to move freight from road to rail. We want to electrify. A colleague I was talking to from Network Rail just an hour ago is involved in the electrification of part of the Midland Main Line, which my colleagues will authorise to enable that to be brought into service. The more electrification, the more capability of bringing freight on the railway, the more cars we get off the road, the less lorries rather we get off the road, the less congestion, the less fuel that is utilised. And there's also those nature-based solutions that I talk about. Use less concrete, use less steel, find other ways of doing things where you don't need to use the old ways of working.
Any questions from within the room here, please? There we go.
How was your time in Saudi Arabia? How was the are you spending?
Oh, God. So I was there 3 years. I was terrified when I got there because I didn't understand the society. We used to say to each other, have you been to the supermarket yet? Have you got a taxi yet? Yeah, oh, well done. And then you'd graduate. Have you got a taxi yet on your own? Oh, yeah. And then after a while, you become familiar with society and you feel very safe and secure, as we did very quickly. And the people were amazing. There was a guy called Abdullah Hedien, another guy called Mohammed Akil, and another man called Fahad Ahmoud. I've not seen them for 7 or 8 years now. I love them like brothers. My job was to train the Saudis, not just to do contract management, but to what we call Saudiization, where you teach people how to do what we do. And Saudiization is about not requiring Western support. And I got to know them and I loved them to bits. That was my greatest memory. But being with them, I'm the only European within 300 miles in the middle of the desert looking at the sky. It's just boys' own stuff. It is just unbeatable. I love the people, I love the place, I love the desert, but I had to come home.
Thank you, Steve. Any more questions from you, Stephen, on Slido?
No.
No. Right. Okay. Thank you very much, then, Steve, for that presentation. Okay, then. So our next set of presentations, hopefully you can hear me down in Southampton. I think we're going to be okay. We're going to look now at a piece of track. So I'm sure you've all stood on a railway platform and you look down onto the track and you just see ballast and you see 2 pieces of plain track going somewhere. But you'll probably all appreciate that at some point in time, trains can switch tracks, and they do that by a piece of rail which connects from one track to the other, and that's called switches and crossings. And depending on where you are in the country and the location of that, these layouts, as they're called, they can get very, very complicated. So now we're going to introduce 3 speakers. First of all, we've got a gentleman called Patrick, and his job is a track maintenance engineer. and he is responsible for looking after track assets in the Hither Green area of London, so inner London. And alongside him, he's got two colleagues. One is called Graham Bleach. He is a track designer from ACOM, a big consulting engineer practice. And the third person is a gentleman called Chris Belton, who works for Progress Rail. And they are going to talk about this piece of track asset from each of their perspectives. So one of them has to look after it. That's Patrick. Every day, that's his job. He has to look after it and make sure it's ready for the operational railway. ACOM got involved with this because the whole thing had to be renewed and therefore it had to be designed. So he's going to talk about all the things he had to think about as a designer. And finally, Chris works for Progress Rail, and they are actually the people that make these massive layouts, which is an extraordinary skill that I can never get my head around. So I hope you really enjoy this, because this is about three people and their relationship with this piece of infrastructure. Okay, so handing over to you guys. Is that all right? You okay?
Hello, mic check, mic check.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Very good, thank you, Joan. Okay, so my name's Paddy White. I'm the track maintenance engineer, as Joan said, for Hither Green, part of London Bridge Delivery Unit. So I work for Network Rail, who, as speaking to some of you before, we're the infrastructure maintainers for the vast majority of the UK's rail network. Part of the asset that I look after is Lewisham Junction, which is one of the more complex and interesting assets in the UK. So I'm here to give you a bit of a maintenance perspective on that. So shall I do? Use a keypad or just click? All right, clicking works. That's fine. Okay. Right, so where is Lewisham? Why should any of you care about it? So Southeast London, the first railway line was built through Lewisham way back in 1849, and it's got a historic design, and as you'll see, a very constrained, awkward layout, which is far from ideal. If you were designing a railway from scratch nowadays, you wouldn't design something like Lewisham. But you know, it is designed how it is originally, and now all sorts of other constraints and buildings and designs have gone up around it, which sort of pen it in to how it is. So we need to work with what we've got. So it carries passengers travelling from across Kent to or from London Bridge, Cannon Street, Charing Cross, Victoria, and more. And up to 30 freight trains a day carrying aggregates, aviation fuel, cars, some of those tunnel segments that Brian was mentioning for HS2, and more. So, for example, that twice daily fuel train carries about 40% of Heathrow's aviation fuel supply. So if the junction goes down or there's the trains will need diverting, then that has a big impact on multiple elements of UK infrastructure. So as an asset, it's a switch and crossing layout. So switches and crossings allow trains to travel across, cross over from track to track, and change direction, change route. So Lewisham Junction allows all four lines travelling through the Lewisham area to cross over each other within a very short constrained distance. So as you can see in that tiny little area there, you've got 8 switches and 40 crossings. So it's a unique and very complex asset to maintain. There's no other junction sort of like it in our network. This is some lovely pictures of what it was like prior to my colleagues who are coming up working their magic on it. So it was at the end of its design life. It was last renewed back in 1977 and had been in track for about 45 years. As you can see, that meant that the formation had gone. The ballast was mud. We had a lot of embankment and earthwork issues there, which, as you can see through some of the pictures on this side, were causing a lot of top and line and level issues. And as a maintainer, those kinds of things are really difficult to fix by normal maintenance means. So you can see there in the middle, we have that failed muddy formation there through that set, which we then spend a lot of time and a lot of hard manual hours digging out to try and sort of rectify the issues. But unless you fix the underlying causes of that, it's only ever going to be a temporary fix. So it gets towards a point where maintenance becomes a lot less efficient. So Lewisham's also a performance critical asset, and the performance of the junction is critical across the southeast. So, I mean, while it's roughly 6 million passengers entering and exiting through the station per year, there's many times this travel through the station. So you get roughly 28 to 29 trains an hour in peak times, train roughly every 2 minutes. And freight runs every day and night, sort of 6 days a week. So we get limited access. You know, it's a lot of the key areas, particularly around London, but across much of the rail network, you know, the customers, whether that's our passengers or our freight, they want access and they want trains to the rail, trains to carry their goods or themselves for as long as they can, which means that us as the maintainers need to squeeze our maintenance into limited time windows to be least disruptive to our customers. And it means that when something does go wrong, because the timetable is very packed, the performance issues that result of that can be severe. So, for example, you can see in the corner of the slide there's a small sort of flake that's breaching that sort of insulated block joint, which is something that's involved in the signalling system there. That small flake that's sort of flaked out and just breached that that section caused a signalling failure, which in one day costs £390,000 worth of delays. So it's not small money that we're talking about, and it's not small impact that we're talking about when something goes wrong. And you know, you can get further risks such as this. So that you can see circled there, that was a significant crack that was found in one of our crossings through the layout, which required a 5 mile an hour emergency speed restriction. And then the crossing basically needed to be plane lined, which means you effectively take the crossing out and replace it with plain rails, but the knock-on impact of that is you're effectively taking out a route. You're meaning that the train can't then use that route to cross over. So basically it stops certain train services for passengers and freight until a new crossing can be manufactured and installed, which in some cases can take months. So as you can imagine, that makes us very unpopular. And you know, failures can be very expensive and reputationally damaging for the business. So it gets to a point where when you have lots of issues like this and, you know, you're seeing significant performance impact, you're finding your maintenance interventions are less effective, that it becomes beyond effective and efficient maintenance. And you have a performance and reliability risk that you're sitting with, which justifies you spending a lot of money and getting these guys in to do a sort of full renewal of the asset. So I will pass over to Graham now to talk to you a little bit about his part in that.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Graham Bleach, and I'm a senior track design engineer working for a large engineering consultancy called AECOM. So my career started in 1990. Oh, I should be hitting the next slide. Sorry about that. That's me. That's a picture of me taken a few years ago. So my career started in 1990 when I left school at the age of 16 and not knowing what I wanted to do. So my parents suggested that I apply for an apprenticeship. Brian, you'd like that one. And which I did at an engineering company. And thankfully I was successful. So always listen to your parents. They do talk sense sometimes. And being a parent, I have to say that. Throughout my career, I've been lucky enough to have worked on some of the UK's most prestigious projects, such as High Speed 1, Heathrow Terminal 5, West Coast Route Modernisation, Crossrail, and London Bridge Station redevelopment, just to name a few. So, Lewisham Junction is a rail renewal job undertaken by the South Rail Systems Alliance, or SRSA for short. SRSA is an alliance of Network Rail, they're the engineering team, Colas Rail UK, who are the delivery team, and AECOM, who I work for, are the engineers and designers. SRSA is a collaborative alliance, and our key objectives are to develop and deliver safely the work bank at the right cost, reliability, quality, and most importantly, on time. This project was one of the largest undertaken by the SRSA in 2022, and the team was tasked with installing over 1,000 metres of new track, with 81 track panels, plus much more than that. The railway was closed for 10 days over the Christmas period to upgrade the junction. My aim as the track designer is to deliver a safe, maintainable design to the agreed dates in the programme. If I don't achieve this, then there could be costly delays to the project. Here is a picture of the existing junction looking from the northwest. Some of the constraints have been highlighted, such as the existing structures. There's a viaduct and there's an underbridge in the middle of the junction. The railway embankment, which was about 6 metres high voltage cables either side, and in the distance you can just pick out Lewisham Station. Platforms 1 and 2 on the right hand side and platforms 3 and 4 on the left hand side. You'll notice how close the junction is to the station, and that actually made the design quite tricky. Oops. Here is a picture from the south side where you can see platforms 1 and 2. The horizontal alignment through these platforms is very curved, and this can be a challenge in maintaining a safe distance between the train and the platform edge. The railway station is elevated from the surrounding area, and the tracks are on structures, and one of the bridges was identified as being weak. So the main challenges. Ideally, you'd like to move the junction away from the station, but this wasn't possible because of the existing viaduct that was at the other end of the site that just constrained the movement. We couldn't move it any further. So what did I do? I improved the junction layout by making the horizontal alignments parallel and by designing the vertical alignments on the same single grade across all lines. When designing, I'm trying to achieve the best low maintenance track alignment. And because of this, we had some significant track movements, both sideways and vertically. At the station, the existing interface between the train and platform was quite poor. There was areas where the train was too close to the platform and places where the train there were some very wide gaps between the train and the platform edge. These large gaps can lead to potential injuries for passengers boarding and alighting the train. So I had to improve the platform clearances whilst trying not to increase those very large gaps, which proved rather difficult. It's kind of a catch-22 situation. Furthermore, I had some existing non-compliant train passing clearances located in platforms 1 and 2. This meant I had to move the tracks apart, but the magnitude of movement was constrained by the platform edges on the outside. Again, it's a catch-22. Quite late in the programme, I was told there was a weak bridge on platforms 1 and 2. This meant I had to move the tracks. This meant I had to redesign the vertical alignment. I had to lower the tracks to reduce the loading on the bridge and rerun all the platform gauging. All this additional work still had to be completed by the original programme submission date. If I didn't issue the design on time, I would be impacting the design of other disciplines. Generally, the track alignment comes first, and other disciplines rely on this information. So in summary, I delivered the design on time and to programme. I had a great sense of achievement because I produced a high quality design that was both difficult and challenging. I had pride in my work. It's brilliant seeing something that I designed get built and the positive impact that it had. Working together as a team, I was able to deliver a scheme that provided wide-ranging social benefits and improving people's lives. Working on the railway delivers an environmental benefit of sustainable travel and is a low carbon transport system. It also boosts both the local and national economy. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Good afternoon all. I wasn't really planning on an introduction, but having heard Graham's and Patrick's and thinking about it, I've actually been in the rail industry for 40 years this month. I started off as an apprentice or a trainee, as they were in those days, with a company called Henry Boot Rail Engineering in Sheffield. And I left school from 83. I went and did a broad-based engineering training scheme, and I went to work for them in 1984. So it's 40 years this month, literally. I've been with Progress Rail now for just under 5 years, and Lewisham was most certainly one of the most challenging projects that we've been involved with during my time with them. Graham's job, alignment scheme design, proving things work, always precedes the manufacturing stage. So Graham's output is our start point. And Graham's output has to prove that the railway is suitable for the speeds and the traffic types, and all the interfaces come together and they'll work seamlessly. So that has to be proven before we can start the build. The build for this job came through to us quite late, actually. We were notified that we were going to be building it for Network Rail in the summer of 2021. And in order to make sure we got the deliveries of the long lead items and the associated supply chain, we needed to get started on rail orders and to understand how many cast crossings we were going to have to produce, some of the big things that you see in the centre here, in order to get things moving and to understand what we had got and what patterns we hadn't got. So we took a flyer, and the original 1977-78 scheme that was put in, that Patrick mentioned, was actually produced by Progress Rail Services, albeit an earlier incarnation called Edgar Allen Engineering in Sheffield. So we had a lot of information about the old junction, and we used that to give us the basis to order rail, because it was a special hardened rail, and to understand the crossing complexities, what it is we'd need to order and get on with to meet the delivery scales. So yes, a complex job. We got started. The actual design from Graham's team came through to us in the September of 2021, and we need to have this ready for dispatch in October of 2022, ready for the Christmas possession. So we needed to get started. Oops. Sorry, thanks. Okay, so the first thing we noticed with the scheme design that came through, which was approved, there was a difference in the footprint. Graham's mentioned he'd done a lot of rectification design to the new scheme to improve the alignment through the junction, to make the road straight and parallel where he could. And it was also slightly narrower because they were going to do some embankment retaining works, which warranted a narrower footprint. There was a requirement as a result of some of the way that the crossings would fit together, that some of the long concrete bearers would have to be the longest that we'd seen in this country so far. And there would be 18 of those, which I'll talk about later. We weren't allowed to break those bearers at all because they were spanning certain tracks. They had to go through the entirety of the junction, which made them one piece. The electrification of the conductor rail, which is part of the southern region where this junction is located, we put on the outline schemes, and we relied upon the interdisciplinary checks and the reviews to supply us with the detailed design, because this was a very bespoke design. We needed that information and we needed it in one go, so we could make those orders work with the concrete bearer manufacturer to consider the special fastenings that had to be put in. The complexity of the junction warranted that it was going to have to be a senior designer. This was certainly no job for a young apprentice or anybody with his own experience. So one of our senior engineers took the job on, and I believe it was about 6 weeks design work to get something together to be able to put through. What we did do, because of the complexity of the job, we produced what we call a skeleton or a skinny drawing. That's all the crude outline information that the project will need to prove or disprove that it will work on the ground to align to the overall scheme design. So the fit of the junction, how it will break up, how it can be delivered, the size of the panels that will be delivered, and how they can plan and progress the delivery scale and the installation scheme. The other thing that went with that, of course, was a complexity of checking it. So somebody designed it, somebody had to check it. And because the output was so complex, we actually decided the best way to do it was to split the job into 4 parts. We each took a quarter of it. We split it into 4 junctions because it split quite nicely. And we concentrated our efforts on those 4 areas, and we came together and compared notes. one person of each team actually concentrated on one specific theme through the entire job. So one person would look at insulated rail joints, someone would look at concrete bearer nomenclatures and numbering to make sure that we covered everything. And there was a common theme, and we came together and compared those results, went back and advised the designer to make the changes. Very complex areas in the backs of some of the crossings here. You can see the rails are very close together, and on several occasions, because of the complexity of the joints that you can see in the photographs across the way, rails come together very closely, and it's not just 2 rails, it can be up to 4. Some rails, what they call check rails, and they need a special arrangement. We had to make them fit. So we had to develop a variation of a new type of clip, a CB6 type clip for the Network Rail catalogue to be able to fasten these things together and be able to put the crossings down. Yeah, and the insulated joints, of course, which we mentioned earlier on about the signalling, we had to encounter those as well. So some interlacing of bolts and some very crafty reversing of the nuts and the bolts and the way things fastened together to make sure that nothing clashed and that the guys on site will be able to install it without problem. The manganese crossings, which was the big part of the job, there were 40 cast manganese crossings on this project altogether, and they were all cast in the Progress Rail foundry, our in-house foundry, which is based in South Queensferry in Scotland, just outside Edinburgh. All the crossings were explosive depth hardened to prematurely harden them, ready to go into service to minimise on follow-up maintenance, and they were all to Network Rail specification. And all the crossings were finished in our specialist area, our factory in Sheffield. So the manganese crossings come down in crude form from Edinburgh to Sheffield, where they're finished. The final geometry and the geometrical requirements are applied, and the rail legs, if they are required, are flash butt welded onto those crossings. So flash butt welding, on this instance, we're welding manganese steel to a rail steel. They will not directly mate. So you have to put an intermediate weld in there to give it something to fasten to, which is something that we do. Concrete bearers was also something that we had a very close tie-in with the manufacturers. That was Cemex, who are just up the road from us in Sandiacre in Nottingham. The primary concern, the longest length of bearer was going to be 10.3 metres, which was a record at the time. We had to be very careful because of the complexity of the narrowness of the cross-section of the sleeper, of the bearer, the control of shrinkage, the effects of the bowing, the concrete, we had to make sure it would dry flat and not hog or sag. The position of the centroid, obviously very, very important. These are pre-stressed, so the centroid has to remain with ample concrete cover, that the strength and the integrity of the sleeper was maintained. And the big one for us, of course, we were going to have to handle these at Beast, and we were going to have to move them around. They would have to be lifted and delivered. We'd have to panel them. They'd have to be delivered to site. So somebody's got to handle these, and they were a very complex piece of kit. We worked hard with Cemex, and we came up with lifting plans and storage plans and a way to have them delivered to minimise the number of moves that we'd have to make with them. The drawing you see here, this is the sort of final result, the guts and the throat of the crossing. A skilled assembly team to put something like this together. This is something you can't just throw together. This takes a lot of planning, and we were planning this job a year out, whereabouts we would put it in our yard. Rail cuts and the build sequence, of course, which was an important one. Intentionally, we were designed it so we could build it from the centre outwards, which is the logical thing to do. You have more control over your tolerances. But as luck would have it, of course, there are in-house issues with the way things are cast, in-house problems with the cast crossing sequencing, and of course we had to change as a result. We had to change the way that the bearers were delivered, and we ended up building it from the outside in, which made making it fit together extremely difficult at the end of the day. Obviously with the effects of all those accumulative tolerances, it made a big difference. And strangely enough, the time of the day also made a big issue and big difference as to how we put that together. In the morning, when it had been sat cold with no sun on it, everything had contracted, so the gaps were big. Come midday, when the sun's out, and we're talking September, October here, hot sun on rail, the rail expands, the gaps close up. So we had a lot of problems controlling that expansion and contraction to make sure that dimensions stayed as they should. The other thing that we encouraged was that the installation team came to Beast and to see us. So representatives from each of the divisions and the technicality teams, electrification team, the track installation team, we wanted them to get familiar with it on the ground so they knew what it looked like, where it was broken up, how it would be dispatched. And we actively encourage that, actually. It makes a big difference. They're not cold to it on site. Oh my God, what we're going to do with this? They know what to expect, and they can subsequently plan how they're going to install on the ground. And that, of course, de-risks the project. As we do with design, we engage with the designers, we engage with the project teams very early on, so they understand what we're up against. And they come to Beeston, it de-risks the project wholesale. The layout, as you can see in the cyan colour, 132 metres long, 23 metres wide, and it was put in the southwest corner of our just over 8,000 square metre yard at Beeston. So it took a big chunk of the yard, a big third of the yard. We did have other layouts down at the time, which were also destined for Network Rail, for other areas of the network with Christmas blockades. So it went through, it was a big job, but it was manageable with the other things that we had going through at the time. Inspection and delivery. Network Rail, it was inspected in October 2022. First of all, we do an in-house inspection, and then the Network Rail external inspections come to sign it off. They're happy with it. Everything meets their requirements. And it passed first time with no snags, which is a testament to the team, really. The industry standard is about 4 snags per layout, whether it be rails slightly short or long, gauge being slightly out. But first time passed, no snags for something like that size, that was incredible. It was going to be delivered in 2 ways. It was going to go by rail and road. It was a split delivery. It was a modular design, which we built in, which helped us with the bearers, but also drove the fact that some of the bearers were as long as they were. And that gave us issues at the other end. So we worked closely with our haulier to understand how we could get this shipped. The rail element went on the tilting wagons that you can see here. We can load the news in our yard at Beeston. They can be dispatched by train. And the other panels went by tilting lorry. Some of the stuff that was actually prohibitive to the loading gauge had to go by road. So it was a mix and match. There were 2 delivery points, and some of them, the panels went to Blackheath Railway Station, to the station car park, and other panels went to Lewisham Station car park, and there was also a small area near the station that things were held in readiness for the blockade altogether. It was restrictive, local conditions and site constraints. We were moving it at a critical time of year. It was approaching Christmas. There were 2 schools in the area. The lorries had to get down some very narrow roads, turn some very sharp corners. And as a result, we had to move lampposts, we had to move road signs, we had to knock a couple of very small brick structures down, and some road closures as well. At the time, the school term was quite difficult. So, in summary, full UK design and manufacture. Close collaboration with the site engineering teams, which I mentioned earlier on. A very robust planning, where there were 16 iterations of the delivery plan before it was decided finally how it would be done. And it was done on time in delivery in full for the key blockade project. So Patrick's team were able to sign this off, and it was put in track, and it was a successful job for all parties.
Very quick tag teaming to finish, because I know we're over. So obviously these guys have done a whole heap of hard work, and we've spent a whole load of money to give us this brand new asset. What are we going to do to maintain it so that we don't end up in the same position in 5, 10, 15 years time? So we're looking at obviously proactive management of the rail profile there. So you can see there, that little video on the screen, that's a Harsco S&C switch and crossing grinder. So that's reprofiling the rails, reducing the rate of defect propagation, and maintaining a good wheel transfer profile. We're optimizing our maintenance and inspection frequencies. We want to be proactive rather than reactive. It's always the challenge in maintenance. We're looking at our lubrication regimes to try and manage noise and wear on the rails. We're planning for some complex tamping, which is sort of big on-track plant, which lifts and sort of consolidates and realigns to maintain your geometry. And then we're also putting in place a strategic spare program of crossings, which we can start ordering to minimise the risk of, if we do have an issue, having a crack and needing to take a route out of service. Yeah, thanks for listening. I'll leave you with the final flyover showing the results of their hard work towards the end of the blockade where they installed it.
Brilliant.
Questions? Oh, I'm told we have time for questions.
Yeah. Any questions from here in the room? If you want to put them on the Slido.
One on Slido,
Okay.
which is Do you use drones to assist in surveying?
Did you hear that? The question coming from the room here is, do you use drones to assist in the surveying part of the process, please? Probably maybe for Graham.
On this job, we didn't, unfortunately. But I have worked on other jobs where we have used drones, and the accuracy is very good, and it means that you don't have to go out on site, which obviously is a lot safer. So, as I said, we didn't on this one, but yeah, you can do it, and they're a very useful tool for designers and anyone else who'd like to use them.
There are definitely elements in not just track maintenance, but also sort of the civil world, geological surveying and stuff. We do use drones now quite regularly in the railway, so they are a part of our inspection regimes now.
Thank you.
And the other one, second one is, from this work, what lessons would you take forward for the future?
All right. Did you hear that one? So the next question is, from this work, what lessons would you take forward for the future?
I think any lessons to take forward is just collaboration with other disciplines, making sure you have all the meetings, interdisciplinary meetings, communication with other disciplines as well, because any change that we might make, we may not think may have an impact with anyone else, but it might do. So otherwise, I hate to say it, but I can't think of anything else because it was really good. It was really good from a design perspective anyway. I think actually probably key thing for us was what helped is we had early engagement with Chris and his team. So he could produce what we call a draft layout for us to use. And that really helped with the design. It probably, I'd say, speeded up our process and our program because we had that information unusually early, but it was really useful.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Thank you very much. But I don't know if there's any questions down in Southampton. Otherwise, I can't see anyone.
Everyone.
No. Okay, guys.
Okay, I got two questions in here. So the first one is, do you have any kind of program that optimizes solution to when you have delays? Because if you have tracks, then you must delays, or you can have a failure at any point. Do you have any program in which you say, if I get a failure in this station, the diversion will be through this? Do you have that kind of program that helps with that process? The second question is, how does social issues, like right now, I think there is a strike, or there is a planned strike for railways in London. How does that affect your work, or when you do take those kind of issues into consideration? Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. First question around sort of control of sort of delays and infrastructure. So it's not my area of speciality, but it's in control in the signal boxes. There are programs which will sort of model and try and optimize the path, but then there is also active decision making that could be done by the people in control. It's not all computer designed. Control, there's certain trade-offs that they sometimes have to make between sort of, do I terminate this service early to get it back to where it was originally supposed to start on time for its next, its next journey, or do I let it run in late and, do I make those passengers change early, or do I then make everyone else late for the next one? That there's still some active decision making in there, but there is computer modeling involved. And second question, what's the second question again? Strike. So yes, industrial action does affect and has affected the railways. So I mean, it can impact. Obviously, it depends. So obviously, there's lots of different groups and working people within the railway in different areas, and there are different organisations that they're a part of. So I mean, I think the ones that were called off this week were TfL, but it depends. The impact on us as a maintainer depends on, if it's the train drivers or the train operators. It does have some impact on us as maintainers because we might need to consider our access and stuff like that. But doesn't because is, you know, if we have members of staff who work for maintenance teams or in signal boxes who try, and that obviously does cause things where we have to sort of review how we mitigate those risks that are caused by those. So yeah, I mean, it does affect, and it is something that we need to consider.
Okay, I think, guys, we're going to have to bring the questions to a close now because we're way over time. Okay, so what we're going to do now is have a short break, and then whenever you come back, we'll have there's 3 more presentations. We've got 2 presentations from industry, and then we've got a gentleman here called Denzel, who is actually a past student here at Sheffield Hallam University, and he's going to talk to you about his experience since he's been a graduate. And similarly, down in Southampton, we've got a young lady down there, Diana, who's going to talk about her experience, and she's started working for TfL. So I suggest we all come back, please, in say 10 minutes, so 15:35, if that's okay. Thank you very much for your attention so far. Thank you.